Hey guys, welcome back to Politigun. Today I'd like to talk about the first 4 words of the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia. The anti-gunners say limiting magazine capacity to hold an arbitrary number of rounds, such as 10, or in the case of New York, 7, is well within the bounds of the amendment because it says well-regulated. Let's take a look at this segment of Reality Check by investigative journalist Ben Swan. It analyzes the Second Amendment and the history behind it.
Among the claims made that the Second Amendment was meant for hunting at a time when people used muskets. So we begin tonight with what the Second Amendment says. Quote, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. To be clear, the militia is not regular military. They were farmers and blacksmiths who went about their daily lives. But notice that the amendment says this is for the security of a free state. According to the 1828 dictionary and other historical documents of the day, that independent state was actually seen as an independent nation. So it's important to understand that the Second Amendment was not about guaranteeing the right to a musket. It was about citizens of a sovereign state matching force with military. Because the Second Amendment was not drafted for hunting or just self-defense from an attacker. The Second Amendment was put in place to guarantee the rights of the individual to be equally armed as military, both foreign and domestic. The Second Amendment is about making sure the population would not be controlled, dominated, or oppressed by a government. It's not my place to attempt to tell you what the founders were thinking or what they'd be thinking today. But the principle of what they put in place had nothing to do with the kind of weapon they were guaranteeing. It was simply about matching force.
Now, everything he says is true. However, we need to clarify what the meaning of well-regulated actually is, because gun grabbers like to use this phrase to justify being able to regulate the kinds of arms you're able to keep today. In order to understand what the amendment really means, we have to look at the context and time period in which it was written. In the 1700s, well-regulated meant to work properly. In this case, a well-armed and trained militia. When you consider that the Second Amendment was to ensure the militia can match force with the regular military, this means the militia has the right to access the same equipment and arms as the regular military. So the phrase, a well-regulated militia, actually means the exact opposite of what the gun grabbers are trying to say. Instead of guaranteeing the legality of the government to restrict weapons to the general public, it actually guarantees the general public's access to the same arms as the regular military. Let's take a look at this M&P 9mm made by Smith & Wesson. Let's go ahead and make sure the gun is clear. This is a very common handgun that is used in the law enforcement and the shooting communities. Its magazine holds 17 rounds. It's a standard capacity magazine. It holds that many because that is what the frame of the gun allows for. The magazine is integral to the intended use and operation of the firearm. It is part of the weapon system. If the government restricts the capacity of this magazine to 10 rounds, you are not using the weapon the way it is designed. Under these circumstances, you could argue restricting this gun's capacity to 10 rounds would render the civilians or militia using it no longer well regulated because the firearm is no longer working the way it was originally designed. Therefore, restricting magazine capacity is unconstitutional. Here's another example. Let's say the regular military were to have need of some personnel to do MOUT operations in an urban terrain and need to have a building cleared. And they called upon a militia unit to facilitate that need. Let's say that militia unit was only armed with bolt-action hunting rifles. If they stack up on that door, the moment they breach it, they'll be annihilated. They won't have the rate of fire necessary in order to take out the combatants inside. However, if you replace their hunting rifles with M4 carbines or something similar to what the military has, that has both semi-automatic and fully automatic or burst fire modes, you increase the effectiveness of that unit exponentially, and therefore you give them a greater chance to survive and continue with their mission. We need to write our representatives. We need to let them know that we are dedicated to protecting our rights. We need to tell them that our loyalty to them only lasts as long as they are serving the people's interests. The one thing that I can agree with what Double Barrel Biden said earlier this year is that we need to make our voices heard. Washington listens when the people speak. You can go to the Congress's website at house.gov to look up your representative's contact information. I'll leave a link below. Also, I'll leave a link to the Military Arms Channel's blog, that is the Bang Switch. They just did an article recently talking about the National Firearms Act of 1934 and how unconstitutional it is. We need to be aware of what kind of laws are already on the books that are already unconstitutional. We also need to rep our representatives about that. So be sure to mention that when you look up their information today. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and I'll see you next time.